Welcome back to Wheatlow Brewery. It's brew day, it's a beautiful May day, sun's shining, and today we've got a beer that's a little bit different. We're going to brew a Saison beer, which is a Belgian farmhouse style beer, and we're going to do an extra twist to it because we're going to take some beautiful fresh green spruce tips straight off the Christmas tree in the garden and use those to flavour the beer by adding them at the end of the boil for the last 10 minutes. So we're using hops called Strisselspalt, which is a French hop from the Alsace region, which should give us a little bit of a peppery note. And we're also going to use Celeia as well, which should give us a bit of those meadow flavours like hay and thyme, and a little bit of subtle liminess. Overall, those hops are quite subtle, but we do expect a bit of a kick from the spruce tips, and we think it will complement it really well. So, this beer uses lager malt as the base malt, and we need 21.1 kilos. Simpsons Lager malt. Whip it in this bucket. There we go. And then a little bit of wheat malt as well. In fact, 4 kilos. So quite a bit. The wheat malt will help with the head retention. 15% that is, 4 kilos. Yeah. So we can get this mashed in. Right, so we're using RO water, reverse osmosis water. That means we're taking all the crap out of the water and all the minerals as well. And some of those minerals are good and we need them for brewing. So that what we do then is add them back in. So in this case, it's a pretty soft water profile. And so we're just going to add some Epsom salts and calcium chloride and some table salt, sodium chloride. Check the pH. So, pH meter, sample. Says 5.4, but of course it's hot, so I've got a jug of iced water here. Pop it in that, cool it down, and read it at 20 degrees. It'll probably go up by 0.2. So that'll make it about 5.6, which is too alkali, and I need to acidify it a little bit by adding lactic acid. So I'll use Beersmith to calculate that, and then we'll add that, and in the meantime, that will cool down. So that's better, 5.2 now, so we can let the mash get on with it. So it's not very often you get wort this clear at this stage. I'm pretty pleased with that. And that should mean we get less trub and so on at the end of the boil, so that's great. Right, there's quite a lot of hops in this beer, but a lot of them are going in the whirlpool and the dry hop. So all we're putting in right at the beginning is Magnum 31.8 grams. Super. 84 grams of Celeia. And same with Strisselspalt. You can smell a sort of pepperiness or spiciness. So I'll mark this up 55 minutes. That's from the end, not the beginning. 45 minutes, should be about the rest of these packs. Alright, so that's 45 minutes from the end. And I need to go find my spruce tips. The spruce tips I picked as soon as I saw that they were beautiful and fresh and soft and small as well. And I just stuck them straight in the freezer. You don't need to blanch them or anything, they're designed to freeze. And that way you can brew whenever you want instead of trying to pick and brew on the same day. It's only about a week ago I picked them. And they'll be perfectly fresh and preserved by the freezer. So, first edition going in, Magnum, as a first wort hop. Always put the first one in as the first wort hop rather than when it boils, because it helps prevent boilovers. Right, so it's the last 10 minutes of the boil now. Got a good rolling boil there. Some proto flock to help create the hop break, which is where all the bits of protein stick together and fall to the bottom. And in here, I don't know if you can see, is the spruce tips, 400 grams. So I'm going to put them in. Yeah, I can smell them already. Set a timer for 10 minutes and then we'll put the cooler temperature down and do the whirlpool addition. So what we're doing now is we're recirculating the hot wort through the heat exchanger with no cooling to heat up the heat exchanger to hopefully about 90 degrees to sterilise it. Turn it up a bit. So whirlpool hops, 200 grams Celeia, 200 grams Strisselspalt, straight in. And these are going to stand for 25 minutes. some wort here for a starter. So boiled that malt extract for the starter. Just got to cool it down and then I can pitch the yeast into there. It's not much of a starter, it's really just to hydrate the yeast and to just get it into a bit of a krausen before we pitch it. Just saves a bit of lag time. It's not a proper starter where we're trying to increase the yeast quantity dramatically. This is the yeast, farmhouse vibes. And it's a Saison yeast, and it says, produces great phenolics and a silky smooth mouthfeel from the high glycerol production. Expect a bouquet of pepper and fruit from this phenolic yeast. So it's going to have some funky Belgian flavours in there. Last time I used a cleaner Saison yeast, which was I think WLP 590, and it was quite nice when it's clean or not too many of these Belgian flavours. So I feel like a bit nervous about this. Is it going to be too farmhousey? But this is how you learn in brewing. You try things and then adapt your next brew. So let's give it a whirl. Stir plate magnet. Airlock. So let's go put that on the stir plate. And this is the fermenting vessel that we're going to use. It needs cleaning, so got the sip ball in there. It's got the caustic in it. Switch on the pump. And you can hear that whirling away inside. So we're knocking it out now through the heat exchanger. It's a bit hot, so I'll turn it down a bit. Slow the pump down, that will cool down quickly. Got a good froth on it from the bit of a starter we made. So that's brew day done. Time to let the yeast do its work, and we'll be back for the tasting. Right, so the spruce juice, which is in this tank here, the Saison is finished fermenting. There's no activity at all in here in the spunding valve. So we're going to take a sample, we're going to taste it, and we're going to check the gravity and see what stage we're at. So to take a sample, we always give it a squirt of sanitizer. Just a bit in a beaker, don't need much. Sanitize again, so there's no beer left in there. And then we'll take this to the lab. This is the easy dens for measuring specific gravity. And just put a bit in a syringe, turn it on, and squirt it in. Now I need my phone. Where's my phone? So this is the app on the phone. So that says 1002, which is 1003. So that's pretty unbelievable. It's this Saison yeast farmhouse vibe is absolutely munched through anything remotely fermentable and not remotely fermentable. So it smells a bit funky, by which I mean sort of touch of the sort of cidery sort of element that you get with a highly attenuated Saison yeast. But it doesn't taste sour, so that's good. It's dry, but it's not as clean as I was perhaps hoping for with this, but it's I think when we add the dry hop, it'll perhaps correct it a little bit. Certainly get that pepperiness that you expect from a Saison yeast. So 103, save that, and according to the gadget, that means it's coming out at 6%, 93% attenuation. So, dry hop time. Centennial. $127. And then we need Strisselspalt. Same, 127. Celeia, 264. So in total, we've got 5, 6, 7, nearly 800 grams of hops. So what's that? 6 or 7 grams per litre, something like that. Quite a lot. Basically, these Celeia. And finally, Saaz. Let's export. Great, so fair ruck of hops. I'm going to flush it with CO2 and then whip it in. Flush this. So now we should be able to release the pressure. Never forget that, otherwise the lid will fly off. It hasn't been under pressure until we just cooled it to 14. We added some CO2 to make sure that it didn't sort of cause a vacuum with the liquid volume, and the air cools, it shrinks. So we chilled it from 20 degrees to 14. It's a bit stiff. And turn on the CO2. You can hear it bubbling. So that means CO2 is coming out. So I'll quickly pour these in. Right, you can see. Give it a squirt, seal it up, and you can hear the CO2 coming out now. We'll just turn that up a bit and churn up the beer with the CO2. You can hear it bubbling away in there. And that's that rumbling, the bubbles rising up through the beer are mixing those hops in nicely. So do that until it gets up to pressurised. So we'll keep this at 14 degrees now for 48 hours, and then we'll cool it down to 1 or 2 degrees. A couple of days later, dry hop's been in 2 days, and we've cooled it down to, well, only 5 degrees actually. Wanted it colder, but the cooler's struggling a bit with probably 500 litres of beer to cool in these 4 tanks. So it's still hazy, but it tastes Christmas tree, piney, sort of grapefruity. It's very dry, and it's going to be very refreshing. But 2 things have happened. The numbers came out a little bit better, I think, on the mash, and the yeast is super attenuated, so it's coming out at 6%, which at 6% actually is a bit strong for a Saison. Supposed to be for refreshing farm workers after a day's scything in a Belgian field. So I'm not sure how much scything they'd do the day after if it was 6%, but still, we'll dump the cone now, get all the hops out, any yeast that's left, and then we need to put it into kegs and should more or less clear, I think. So let's do that now. So all the bits I need: and sanitizer. I guess I could squirt down here. The beer pours a beautiful golden colour with a slight, rather appetising looking haze to it, which is pretty normal for a Saison with 15% wheat. Right, this beer is called Spruce Juice, and it's made with the spruce tips from the Christmas tree. But it's also a Saison beer. Now, Saison beer is a French or Belgian farmhouse style beer made with a Saison yeast, which is typically made, or used to be made in the winter, ready for the farm workers that would have a big thirst on after a day's scything. So it's supposed to be lightish, refreshing, thirst quenching, and obviously give you a bit of a boost for the next day's scything as well. So a bit of goodness in it, obviously. Now, the properties of a Saison, and if you buy a Saison, sometimes, or if you're not that familiar with Saisons, you may think they're kind of sour beer, but there are actually two kinds of Saison. There's what they call a clean fermentation, which this is, where you just use a Saison yeast, or there's a mixed fermentation where you add something to make it a bit more sour, like Brettanomyces or other bacteria. So this is a clean Saison, it's not sour, and I'm absolutely thrilled with how it's turned out. It's the yeast farmhouse vibes, WHC farmhouse vibes, super attenuated this down to 1003. So with a starting gravity, I think it was, of 1049, and expecting to get something like 5.2, 5.4, it's actually turned out at 6%. But let's talk a bit about the aroma. So, well, the first thing is, I can start smelling it about here. So it's not very pungent, but it's not, it hasn't got a lower odour either. So, and you can immediately smell the spruce and sort of piney kind of flavours. But it's a bit more layered than that. It's not overwhelming, the spruce and pine. It's got other things lurking in the background. So there's a bit of lemon and a bit of sort of meadow, if you like, a summer meadow that's just been cut, and those kind of floral, grassy aromas. And then, if you really think about it, there's almost like a juicy fruit type, chewing gum, bubblegum flavour smell coming from it as well. So quite interesting, complex and layered. Let's try for mouthfeel. Well, the first thing is it's nicely carbonated. So the bubbles on your tongue kind of lift the beer off. It's very, it's not watery, but it's light and it's slick in your mouth. It's quite smooth. You can feel, as the beer goes back across your tongue, the different flavours kicking in. And that smoothness and kind of softening of the flavours so they mix well together could well be from the yeast, which is supposed to be a high glycerol producing yeast, which apparently smooths things out in the mouth. So taste. Yeah, first of all, a lemony taste at the front, and then as it moves back in your mouth, a more harsher citrus like a pithy grapefruit, and then after you've swallowed, you get a sort of piney, sprucey kind of a flavour. It's very delightful. It's not strong in any one direction. It is bitter. Probably, if you don't like bitter beers, it might not be your favourite. But it's very dry, without being cloyingly dry. It's moreish, perhaps because of that dryness and because of the high carbonation. And it certainly doesn't taste 6%. I did ask the head drinker in the household earlier what strength she thought it was after a taste, and she said 4.6. So at 6%, I think it could be a bit deceiving. I think if we'd had a day on the scythe and we wolfed a few of these down with a big thirst, we might be in a bit of trouble the next day. Yeah, so light and it just slips down. It leaves afterwards quite a smooth, creamy almost way of the flavour residing in your mouth, and mixed with a kind of faint lemony taste. So I must say, it's absolutely delicious, and on a nice warm day, which today is nearly 30 degrees, you can certainly smash a few of these in. I better hide it from Mrs. B in case she finds the pump. So really pleased with that beer. It's a nice experiment to use spruce tips in a beer anyway. It's also got Centennial in the dry hop, so you're getting a bit of pininess from Centennial and spruciness from the spruce tips. Saaz, the noble hop from Czech Republic, that's giving you your meadowy stuff and a bit of lemon, and your Strisselspalt as well, definitely the herbal meadow kind of thing. So yeah, great combination. Definitely brew it again. I did pick a second batch of spruce tips. I could brew it again later in the year when it's non-spruce tippy season, or I could try adding them to a West Coast IPA and experimenting more with that combination of the piney flavours of hops like Centennial and other sea hops and see how that goes. But in the meantime, I think I'm going to finish this frothing ale. Cheers.